it's Toby from Heavyweight MMA. Today with Geordie, the Fight Dietitian. Geordie, how are you, bro?
Hey, Toby. Good, man. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. Now, these days, the nutritionist is a big part of many combat sports fight teams, man, and you've been a part of some massive campaigns lately. How are you feeling, man? I'm just coming off like Edwards Rin as an example. You're a part of that team, right?
Yeah. Been working with Leon for a couple of years now. So, yeah, that was really cool to see. I think it's cool being part of the camp, right? You see so much behind the scenes, and I think Leon has put in a lot of work, and he's had a tough road. So that was really satisfying to see him get that win.
Were you cage side, bro, when it all went down?
No, I was in the stadium, but not cage side. I had cage side tickets. I gave it to two of his sponsors though that have been working with him for a while, and it was their first trip away. So I thought, yeah, just have the cage side tickets. A cool experience.
How does it feel for you, man? I mean, you're quite a big part of their camp in the lead up, and then actually on the days before the fight, you guys pick up your game. You have to be more integrally involved. Then to see him losing the fight and then come back like that, does that actually have an effect on you personally, bro?
Yeah, I think if anyone says that it's all business and you keep emotions out of it, they're probably lying. Like, just purely because you have to have a really big connection with these guys. Like, you talk to them every single day. For a lot of fighters, like what we do, we're in more contact with them than they are with any other of their coaches. So we're talking to them multiple times throughout the day, like checking in with them. You really get to know them. And I guess you get to see their story, right? And I think a lot of people, when they watch them on TV, you kind of glorify this person and it takes the human value away from it. And they're just this big sports star that's making all this money and doing these things. But that's a person, they've all got a story. They've all got a family that they're supporting. And once you realize that and you see how much it means to them. So yeah, it's a really cool thing to see these guys go through this and live out their dream and then achieve that dream. It's a really cool experience.
Yeah, man. And from your perspective, how do you take him as a man? Like, what do you feel for him? What's the sort of vibe you get, and what sort of experiences you had with him?
Yeah, Leon's a great bloke. We kind of have a rule at our team, like no shit people. So I think we're very fortunate, right? Like, we get to pick and choose who we work with, and I'm very, very adamant that we don't do that. We don't really work with people we don't vibe with. And Leon's awesome, man. Like, I genuinely really enjoy being around him. Like, a lot of our clients, like you said, in that last week, we're very hands-on with them, and we basically live with them that entire week and cook for them and do everything else. And yeah, that's very tough if you don't get along with that fighter well. But everyone, all of our top guys, whether it's Israel, Alex, Leon, any of the other guys, they're all really good blokes. Like, I think that definitely when they get in their cage, they get in that mindset and they become that person they need to be to get that job done. But just hanging around them, like, they're all high achievers, high performers. They're really awesome people to be around. You learn a lot from being around that type of mindset too.
It's a funny thing that not everyone might realize too, is that I would say, like, you'd probably say 90+% of combat athletes are kind of good people and nice people. It's kind of interesting that people might not realize that, but maybe it's something about, putting all your aggression and everything out every day that you come back and maybe just grinding every day. It maybe polishes and make them nice people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very hard to be like a shit person when you get punched in the face every day, right? Like, you get humbled. I actually went back to my partner. She's Canadian, and went to visit her family last Christmas. And that was one of the first things they said to us was like, how do you handle all the aggressiveness and that aggressive nature of fighters? And it's like, well, we don't, because most of them aren't like that. Like, most people who know how to handle fear aren't really that aggressive, right? It's people who don't know how to handle those tricky situations or get scared and lash out. They're pretty much the aggressive ones. The guys that go through that every day and know how to handle those situations, they don't need to be aggressive. Like, those guys can kill any other person in the world with their bare hands. What do they got to be scared of?
Yeah, exactly. Although every now and again you do get that nutter that's maybe suffered through childhood or something and has that aggression and whatever towards everyone. But yeah, in general, pretty good people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you find that in most sports. You could go to darts or you could go to checkers, and you always find that one person that's a bit left of center.
Yeah, man. So through 2022, you've had a massive year, man. Some of the highlights would obviously be Leon just gone. Alex Volkanovski's performance was incredible, right, against Max Holloway, number 3. You were very involved in that one again, right?
Yeah. So we've worked with Volk very, very closely. I think Volk, in terms of like sports science. He's by far the most interesting person to work with. He's by far the athlete I've gotten the most out of in terms of a professional career, in that he is so athletic and he does everything so by the book. So you can see, and me and Chris Jaffrey, his strength conditioning coach, we track all of Volk's data over time. So it's really, really cool to see how Volk has developed as an athlete over the last few years. And I say this very openly, I think Volk is Australia's best athlete. And the scary thing is Volk's still getting better. That's the crazy thing about Alex Volkanovski, is when we look at these numbers camp to camp, they're still getting better, which is terrifying, I think, for every other athlete in his division and everyone he has to compete against. Really, really cool when you're involved in that process. But I think, yeah, Alex Volkanovski's best is still yet to come for sure.
Yeah, when you watch even just on a fighting perspective only, his trajectory is, if anything, the incline may have increased, right? Like he seems to be improving more and more, like each fight. Like the last few fights have just been incredible. Zombie and then Holloway, just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just so textbook, right? But it's that old saying of how you do one thing's how you do everything, right? And that's Vulcan every aspect of his training, no matter if it's the ground game, it's the stand up, if it's recovery, if it's his diet, strength conditioning, whatever it is, he's 110% committed in every single field. And I think at the end of the day, that shows, that commitment is showing in his performances.
That's it, man. And then jumping over the ditch, obviously Israel had some good performance this year. There's some negative things being said by people that maybe don't know fighting enough, but Israel's had great performances as well. How was it working with him this year?
Yeah, Israel's a freak of nature. Like we talk about Alex, how he's like the ultimate athlete. I think when we talk about natural talent and that genetic, I guess, side of it, I think Israel takes the cake. Like I've never worked with an athlete that can do what Israel can do. And I appreciate not many people get the chance to say, go watch him spar or hit pads or whatever. But when you see him, it's very, very evident that he is a special human being. And I think, yeah, the criticism he's copped, if you're not a deep fight fan, you'd probably, yeah, okay, whatever. I think it's insane what he has been able to do as a defensive striker and to execute the game plan, especially when you're in the know and you know what Israel is trying to do, and that every single fight he never misses a beat and he's always on it. I think it's just incredible. Like to have the mental fortitude to pull off the fights the way that Israel is doing is just beyond crazy, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to shut people's game down. Like people go in there with the intention of catching him, and then they realize they've got to be scared of getting knocked out themselves. So their whole game gets shut down. So it's not really, it's hard to say, oh, it wasn't a great fight because they didn't stand toe to toe and try and kill each other when someone's completely shutting down someone else's game. It's like an incredible technical thing.
Man, that's the thing that I always tell people at this level. It is literally just a game of who can execute their game plan the best. Like everyone, when they get to a championship fight in the UFC, is tough. Everyone is strong. Everyone cuts weight well. Everyone does their recovery properly. Everyone does everything right. It's literally just a game of who can execute the game plan better. And it's just so impressive, I think, that Israel can just do that so consistent and do it so well and not miss a beat. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, man. And we've just talked about England, Australia, New Zealand, man. Between the three, who's got the best banter, man? This is what I want to know.
Definitely, yeah, it's definitely high. It's definitely much higher than when you hang out with the Yankee Doodles in America. That's for sure. They don't seem to get the banter too much. They freak out when they see any of the teams walk in and hear us talk to each other. They probably think we all hate each other. New Zealand's definitely good. Like the guys at City Kickboxing have some good chat, and I've started bringing my guys over to the fight weeks with me. I need to start training them up. We're obviously getting very busy and there's other things happening in the company, and my time is becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. So I've started training the guys, and the first thing I say to them is like, hey boys, like when you come here, there's going to be some real banter thrown around, and you got to, thicken up that skin if you want to be able to hang around. I think I'll give New Zealand, they've probably got the best chat, I would say. It's a close second though. The Poms are pretty good. The Poms aren't as brutal. They're not as brutal. They won't go for the heart like the Kiwis do, but the Poms do have some good chat as well.
Yeah, man. As you just mentioned, you guys are going off, man. I talked to quite a lot of up and coming guys around Australia, New Zealand, and almost every person, I would say again, it's like a 90% ratio. We're working with the Fight Dietitian. It's just your business is booming these days, bro.
Yeah, it's a cool thing, right? Like it's obviously good on the business side of everything, but I think more so when I set out to start it, right, like that was the goal. I wanted to have a touch in every single gym in Australia and New Zealand and have some type of influence to obviously get that message out of, hey, don't cut weight like an idiot. And I think we've been very fortunate now that we've got guys like Israel Adesanya, Alex Volkanovski, Leon Edwards, Kai Kara France, Brad Riddell, Dan Hooker, all those guys that are openly championing that, saying like, hey, don't cut weight like an idiot. There's a better way to do it. Like focus on fighting, like leave that to the professionals, do it properly, be a professional in that area, and then focus on the fighting. That's what matters. So it's cool to see that coming to life. It's been a long time, like it's been a long 4 years. It's been very tough getting it out there, but now that it's happening, it's really cool to see.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's growing in leaps and bounds in not just the diet area and nutrition and performance, but just everything, right? It's what I wanted to know is like we're talking about these high performance athletes, and obviously everyone's recognizing that to be the best you can be in a high level athletic sport, you need to have some sort of focus on nutrition. Um, when we talk about performance and weight management, obviously that's something that goes to the masses as well. And I want to know your ideas on like how much nutrition can affect someone like just in their day to day. I mean, you know, as a recreational sort of athlete, as a business person, as a mum and dad, like how much can you influence your life by focusing on the right nutrition?
Massively, right? Like as you said, the business is growing and we definitely work with a lot of fighters, but I always say to people there's a lot more non-UFC fighters than there are UFC fighters, you know. And so the business itself is working with heaps of corporate people. Personally, I take on a lot with my retainer, just CEOs, tech people, business people who want exactly that. It's like, hey, I'm not a fighter, I love the sport, but I want to get the best out of my day. First thing I say to all of them is you get your nutrition right, the first thing you'll notice is the mental clarity that comes with it, right? So once you get your eating and your hydration down pat, you realize that you feel the difference in your day-to-day energy. You're sharper on your decision making. It's the first thing after 2-3 weeks. All of our clients, whether they're tradies that go work on a job site every day, they go to the office, they're nurses in the hospital, they all come back, hey man, like my energy is way better. I just feel so much more sharper. And it's just following these principles of, hey, you got to get this much fluid in at this time, and you've got to eat this way and get this many calories in. So you're not just slugging around and feeling terrible all day. And you know what? If you are training, you've got to put the right fuel in to get the most out of that training and that recovery. This is how you do it. And they're just simple things. And then they do pay dividends. Two biggest things is energy levels and mental clarity.
It's crazy. Yeah, that mental clarity is the biggest one that I've noticed personally. Like I'm an amateur in nutrition, but just when I've cleaned up the diet and dropped out some of the things that general things people say are not so good, you know, your general sugars and breads and things like that. After a few weeks, that mental clarity really makes a difference. I describe it to people like it's lifting a cloud off your thinking. Like it's such a strong effect, and I don't think people realize what they can do, like how much it can improve their thinking.
It's crazy, hey man. Like you see people and they're taking like mushrooms or alpha brain or all these other supplements. I'm not ragging on them. There's probably a time and place for all of that. But you know what you can do that's way cheaper and way more accessible is get your nutrition and hydration right. Like you can start doing that right now. People wake up this morning, they can start doing that right now and they can start seeing the benefits from it right now as well. So it's a crazy thing. I think we just live in this world where we want to, you know, be able to take something and that'll solve all the problems. When really the solution's a lot more simple.
Yeah, and just not to necessarily promote you, bro, but what sort of plans do you have in place for people at like at that recreational level, or you know, business professionals, etc., that are interested in working with you?
Yeah. So we take on our most popular service that we provide nowadays is what we call an everyday performance plan. And like performance is a funny word, right? Like we all think like performance in these top level UFC athletes. It's like absolutely not. Like Toby, you have a performance that you have to do every day. I have a performance that I have to do every day, whether that's you rocking up and going to a job site and performing well at your job, or going to the hospital as a nurse and performing well as a nurse. Everyone has to perform every day. And so that's the most popular service is we take these guys through an 8-week program. And it's not so much just, hey, eat this food in this way. It's like, hey, you need to understand why you're eating this food and what the best time to have this food is. And you know what? How do you change that when life gets in the way? What happens when the kids are playing up and you're running late for school and you can't have breakfast and you've got to go to the gas station and get food? How do you navigate that to make sure you're putting the right fuel in every single day to fuel your performance, whatever that performance is. So that's usually right now, that's our best selling program that we do. And that for me is probably more rewarding, if I'm being honest, than seeing these top UFC guys, because it's everyday people like you and me. And it's everyday people, like you said, that are waking up. Maybe they're feeling a bit foggy. Maybe they don't have the best energy levels. And it's something they can do right now. Right now, they can start making these changes and they can start getting results. So it's really cool to be a part of that and really making an impact at that level too.
And the other thing I think people think when they think of nutrition, they think of things like organic food and supplements, etc., which all come at a massive cost. Man, is there the way you run your programs? Is there a way? Is it can it be done in a relatively not expensive way, or does it all fall into that sort of higher cost of food?
Yeah, me and Loz, one of the other performance dietitians in our team, just recorded a podcast about this, and we titled it "Healthy Eating is Not Expensive." Like, it absolutely does not have to be expensive. The thing is that wraps a lot of people up, and they get in this real rut of like, oh, do I have to have this? Should I have this label? Is really just a misunderstanding of the basics. And it's hard. Nutrition's a hard field to navigate, because we get over here, we've got some jacked out dude eating testicles and liver. And then over here, we've got all these people telling us to eat just plants. And that's, so it's like, well, where do you fall and what's true? Once you understand the underlying principles behind how your body takes in food, how it absorbs it, how food correlates with your mental clarity, with your energy levels. Once you understand all of these things, you can look at, this jacked up dude and all the guys that are just eating plants and go, oh, I can see how that could work, but it's probably not going to work for me because of X, Y, and Z. So being able to like get through all the mud and then go through to the forest and find the trees, is probably going to get you the most bang for buck. It's just misconfusion, right? Like misunderstanding of very, very basic principles that lead to a lot of confusion. So if you can get through that, you'll probably set yourself up pretty well.
Yeah, man, it is definitely a minefield. Just a small example is I remember being told a long time ago that you shouldn't eat before training because it concentrates all the energy of your body on working on the digestive system and whatever, and it's not a good thing because it'll take away from the energy that you need to do the activity. And I've kind of been following that principle for a long time, and then just hearing recently more about like eating and started eating pre-workout food like an hour or two before, and it makes a big difference to me, like in not just the energy for the actual training itself, but after the training as well. It's just like little things like that. Like you can just get thrown right off by someone saying something general or something that might be specific or might be correct, but there's better ways to do things. Makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I was just talking about this earlier. When I was a younger athlete, when I was like 15 or so, I had a dietitian for I think 2 years or something. I couldn't tell you one thing that she told me, but she was trying to tell me all these same things. But again, I just had this pretty bad secondhand information from my coaches and everything else. And I just took that as gospel truth. So I think we can get like really hard and fast and firm with our beliefs. And it's hard to change. Like, it's absolutely hard to change. But I think what we're seeing now in 2022, social media, one, there's a lot more bad information, but two, there's a lot more good information getting out there. It's just being able to realize when, maybe I should question this, then you know what, this is probably a better source of information, a bit more credible. So cluing up on what's good information and what's not so good information is really important as well.
Yeah, man, actually, you just touched on something I was thinking about with you. So you mentioned something before about like the gains that people get are like usually long term, right? Like in the terms of combat sports, etc. Like BJJ as an example, you can't be an overnight success in BJJ. You have to put in the hard yards. It's over a course of years or decades to be a master. Same with anything, including your profession, man. And you're still a young man. Obviously, you're doing very well. But are you concentrating in your area on making sure that you don't just get set in doing what you do and continuing to, look at research and understand more and more so that you're striving for that mastery as you develop?
Yeah, especially in any science, really, you can't get too comfortable with it. Like the second you get really comfortable and the second you think that you know everything, you know nothing, right? Because it's like martial arts, right? Imagine all the people that are black belts now that didn't grow up or didn't go through like the leg lock period, and now leg locks are around, and you, to compete and to be a strong competitor in jiu-jitsu, you need to know all of that. It's the same with science. Like there's a whole bunch of information over here that we all learned when we went through all our tertiary education, but it's almost every other day new bits of information come out and you have to stay on top of it. You don't have to, but I feel like as a team, we definitely need to be on top of all the latest research, because there might be something in there that we can pull out and we can use with our clients, whether that's a UFC world champion or whether it's just a stay-at-home parent, that they can get huge benefit from. So it's really, really important that you're always on top of this information, you're always upskilling, and you're always questioning what you know. Like I can't tell you how many times I've flip-flopped on our practices that 2, 3, 4 years ago I thought were cement, and I thought they were the absolute best way to do things. And I've just done a complete 180 and said, no, now that this has come out, and now that I've put this into practice with X, Y, and Z, I now know Z. So yeah, you've always got to be upskilling, always learning more, and always adding to your practice.
I was a while back, I talked to Steve Maxwell. Do you know Steve Maxwell? Quite
No,
famous
no.
in BJJ circles, and he was one of the first black belts in America under the Gracies and everything, and quite an incredible guy. Does a lot of people question some of his things, lots of training, etc. But he said never trust anyone that's under 80 years old, because it takes that long for people to really master what they do. So it's kind of interesting. I know 80 may be a bit too old. They might have lost a bit of their brain by then, but yeah, I think it makes sense though. It does take time to develop everything, right? But yeah, you're on your way, bro. It's good to see you doing great things.
Yeah, I always think never trust anyone that says something and doesn't have a but or what if afterwards, or if this, or doesn't have some type of contingency like that. So if they say something and they're 100% committed to that, I always get a bit skeptical.
Not so flexible. Now, man, these days we talk about like how MMA and combat sports is developing so much. They're integrating everything in, whether it's a strength and conditioning, mind coach, breathing coach, nutritionist, dietitian, of course. They say 1%ers, but I know I'm thinking like fueling your body has to be higher than 1%, don't you think? What percentage would you give it as your own estimate of your overall performance as a combat athlete would come down to your nutrition and fueling?
Yeah, this is an interesting concept. Actually, Dave Wood, who is does a lot of the breath work and integrated training with City Kickboxing, he said this once in one of his seminars when he was talking about breathing. I thought it was very similar for the nutrition. He said, we talk about these 1%ers as if they're just 1% gains. And don't get me wrong, there are things you can do that are 1% gains. But when you're talking about breath, when you're talking about breath work, you have to breathe to stay alive.
Yeah, you take it away, you die.
Yeah, you take away your breath, you don't. And same when we look at your nutrition, you take away your food, you die, right? So we separate all of these things into 1%ers, but really it's one in the whole. Like you can't be a great athlete unless you breathe in oxygen, unless you bring in nutrition. It's just whether you want to be the best athlete you can possibly be. So you can get away and be an okay athlete without ever looking at your nutrition. But when you want to get to those higher levels and you want to compete, you do have to start ticking all of these boxes, because there's one thing I've noticed at elite level sport. There's guys that are just genetic freaks and they can get away with not doing everything as perfect as they can. But that probably represents less than 1% of everyone who does sport. And then there's going to be people who just sit below them and they have to work pretty hard and they have to tick off a lot of the boxes to even compete with those top level guys. And then there's the bulk of people below them, which have to do everything they possibly can to maintain in the race with those middle tier guys. And that's a lot of the people. So I think we look at other people and we see these genetic freaks like, I don't worry about my nutrition. I don't worry about this or that. And you go, yeah, but you're the very, 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 very small minority. And for most people, if you want to compete at a very high professional level and you want to do it for a long period of time, you have to tick off all of these things. It's not a case of 1%, 2% or whatever. It's the 99%. You have to tick off every single one of those. And that's just to compete. So once you're in competing, that's when we're talking about these little extra 1%ers. So I think as a baseline, you've got to get it all right. If you're on the majority like you and me, Toby, you got to get everything right. Like you got to do your nutrition, your sleep, your recovery, your breath work, your integrated training. You've got to do all of that just as baseline. And then once you bake the cake and you're in the race with all of these guys, you can start looking at the sprinkles and the extra 1%ers.
That's it, man. Something that kind of put it a little bit like in a simple way, something I was listening to the other day, it was a nutritionist talking about between or training in one day, if you do multiple sessions, how you need to make sure you have adequate recovery and adequate fueling for your next session, because it directly correlates to your performance. If you come in there 80% rested and 80% fueled, you're going to have an 80% performance in your actual training session. Like, it's a direct correlation, right? It's not something to play with. Yeah? It's like, if you don't fuel yourself properly, your performance is not going to be at its prime and its peak, right? So it's like just directly correlated to your performance. So it's definitely much more than a just like a 1%er. It actually it moves in with the overall, like, importance of everything, right? Like including your skill work and everything. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, what I usually say to guys, and especially people who have been doing sport for say 10 plus years, can really connect with this, is that if you take two guys at the start of their careers and you appreciate that every single training is a stimulus for an adaptation to become a better athlete, because that's what training is, right? We want to get stronger, fitter, faster. And then nutrition is the framework that holds all of that together. You take these two guys and let's say one of them does everything right and they get it right 95% of the time. And then you've got this other guy that gets it right 70% of the time. You multiply that over a year, that's a huge difference when we're looking at how much adaptation did those two athletes get to becoming a better athlete. And then you multiply that over a 10-year period or a decade. And I really don't think it's that surprising that we get these guys that are cracking into the top 10, top 5 of the UFC, and then the guys that just can't crack right in, because we're seeing the difference. This guy did it 95% right every single time over that 10-year period. This guy only did it 70, 80%, and we're seeing that difference when it comes up to this elite level sport. So it's important, and it's important over the long term.
That's it, man. Hey, the last point I sort of wanted to talk to you about was a while back I heard you saying how Kai Kara France, you believed he had the potential to go all the way. It may have even been when we talked a year ago, and almost came to fruition. He was having a great fight. Unfortunately, Kai didn't pick up the gold, but in the future maybe he will. So I'm kind of interested from your perspective, being pretty intimately involved with many, many athletes. Who do you think you would like spotlight for future gold at an international level, and who you think for the more regional level of Australia, New Zealand? Any names that kind of stick out to you from their work ethic, etc., from working with them?
Yeah, there's a couple of guys that, the first one I'll say, but it's going to hurt me to say it because me and her have worked together for a very long time, and I kind of see her a bit more as a little sister now. But Casey O'Neill I'm convinced she's going to be the flyweight UFC champion. I really don't have any doubts. And I think I've seen the transformation of Casey over the years and how she's really come into her own as an athlete. I think before, when she was on the local scene, she was just someone trying to be a fighter. And now she is really well and truly an athlete that is perfecting the art of MMA. And it's crazy to see her growth. And again, she's very similar to Volk in that her trajectory is just getting better and better and better. So I think Casey at the UFC level is for sure going to be the UFC flyweight champ. On the local scene, there's someone who's just cracked it into UFC contenders, Jack Jenkins. I'm sure most people are very familiar. I think Jack has potential to do really, really well once he gets in the UFC. He is just a very, very gifted guy, and he's very, very diligent in his training as well. He shares a lot of the same traits that a lot of these top level guys do. The next one that I'll say is, and I'm a bit biased because I spent a lot of time with freestyle MMA, but I think Colby Thickness he's gone through a bit of a rough year, and he's had some tough setbacks with concussion and everything. But one thing I've learned hanging around with these top level athletes, and Kai is a great example of this. It's not so much like the setback, it's how you handle the setback. And Kai, after that fight, he looked me dead in the eye and he said, "I'll win that gold. I'll come back and I'll win that belt. I have absolutely no doubt about it." Colby had that exact same attitude when he went through all of this, through his concussion. He did everything right. He was messaging me, "Can I get a nutrition plan for this concussion protocol? Like, I need to do everything I can to get back to it." The way he's faced the setbacks that he's seen is just, his mindset is already at that elite level. So I think he's going to do some big things in this world as well.
Awesome, bro. Yeah, that's good. Actually, I actually pretty familiar with Jack and Colby. So yeah, good guys to pay attention to, and I'll definitely be covering these guys in the future. So be reporting with them. Cool, man. Thanks so much for your time, bro. You've convinced me. I'm gonna hit up your team for a plan, bro, a nutrition plan, and try it out. Yeah. So I'll send you guys an email shortly.
Yeah, awesome. Looking forward to it, Tony. Always good chatting too, bro.
Cool. Thanks for your time, bro. And yeah, we'll chat soon.